Good morning, and thank you for joining us for the reading of Christ's letters. We're at the very beginning of letter 8, so there's nowhere to go, but whatever reference you have, just go to letter 8. So with that, let's just go into this beautiful space as we prepare our mind, our heart, our being, opening us to that great wisdom from these letters and from the Christ directly. Through me, through you, we each get what we need to get from this time. So we go into the stillness and silence where we remove judgment, we remove criticism, we're just open to truth, that's all. Just open to truth. The greatest truth we can take in, receive, accept. And if anything does not resonate as true, just let it go by the wayside for now. Just put it on the back shelf, on the low burner. And there may be experiences to call it forth. And there may be places where we totally disagree. And in the universe, that's all part of the whole. That's all part of the good. So, so let's remove judgment. Let's just go into that stillness and silence. That place where only peace resides. We know our mind is quiet. We know we have no thought. When all we experience is this sublime serenity, peace, calm, gentleness, kindness, beauty. The presence of that life essence within. That essence that we come to find out what it truly is, so we can truly use it in wonderful ways. First for our own self, our own peace, our own joy, our own happiness, our own support. As we receive it for that, with loving kindness, we receive that for everyone. For this is the way the world could be in this moment in time with you and me. Calling forth our awareness of the presence, that from which everything comes. And not only is that within us, it's also around us. And is, in fact, us. In a sense, it's giving me the ideas coming through my mouth for our ears to hear. The blessings I receive are available to you. And they bring us all this loving energy from our call from Tuesday night. We had good dialogue. We always have good dialogue. But just be in the openness to receive the greatest blessing from this reading tonight. So that we live the rest of this day, week, month, year in this heaven on earth within us. As we have it within us and around us, we create it around us. And all those of like mind, of like energy, of like consciousness benefit from it as we benefit from them, and we form communities that want to be together in this peace, in this joy, in this love, in this understanding. The truth of being. We are that which we have come from, that which everything comes from. That's not only the beginning of everything, it is that which the beginning comes from. So just extend this peace beyond our form, beyond the room that we're in, beyond the dwelling we're in. And just know that this consciousness that we are in is in truth universal. We are an individualization within it, expressing it. And we have free will to choose how we express, how we express. I was thinking blessed. So as we read this letter, it comes from the depth of us, revealing to us the truth of the Creator. And the Creator and Christ is giving us that which the Creator can create. The Bible begins with the Garden of Eden. And man has distanced himself from this garden. And Christ has come to say the garden is still here, just not recognized. So as we read tonight, we're going to read about the world that is, and basically why it is, and how to see it differently. And therefore, as we see it differently, it becomes different. Well, I could stay there forever, but my commitment is to read the letter. So thank you for this time. Believe me, this time has been hours. You have brought it forth along with our Tuesday night group. So at the beginning of each letter, I used to do this every week for the first 8 years of recording. Back when I used to record, and those are available if you ever want them. But this is the introduction to the letters from Christ. And then, I used to read this every time. And I want you to hear it because for me, what it reminds me of is why Christ came in 2000. The absolute right from his being is telling us, this is why I have come. Very, very concise in like 2, maybe 3 paragraphs. So, and also why we've come together, because this is what he's come for us. To find from which we have been seeking. And I read, from Christ returns, reveals startling truth. There's no difference in any of the collections of the letters. There's a new publication out, and also an ebook that has some titles and subject headings, as well as a very detailed table of contents for all these, so that one can go through a table of contents if we're looking for a specific item, or to see what's in a specific chapter perhaps, and then see what we want to do. So I reference the ebook to that. I don't have a reference to the new publication, which is pretty much identical, except for a little bit of editorial things, so like headers and so forth. But everything else is exactly the same. The format of the printing is the same. The wording is the same. Since the original manuscript, which had several typos and grammatical errors in it, they were corrected as it went into publication, but that's all. The original manuscript and all the manuscripts that we have since then are all the same. Okay. So Christ returns, reveals startling truth. Introduction. Christ says, I've come to rectify the misinterpretations placed on the teachings given, were known as Jesus in Palestine 2,000 years ago. Now again, this is Christ saying this. Christ also says, this is the Christ of Jesus, okay? Because people are on the threshold of a world crisis of enormous proportions, it is vital for survival that I, the Christ, should reach all who will listen. Breathe that in. We have come. We are the listeners. We are the bringer forth. Reading my letters gives you the true processes of creation in which you yourselves play a major role. It is imperative you should understand this creative process. It's imperative you should understand this sufficiently to enable you to embark on the implementation of a higher vision for all humanity, beginning with ourselves, I like to insert, okay? All comes from within. It is impossible for my spiritual consciousness to take on human form. To enable me to speak to you directly, I have deprogrammed and prepared a receptive, obedient mind to receive my truth and frame it in words. She is my recorder. And I am just so grateful for our dear recorder. As far as I know, she's still with us at age 99, very anonymous. She didn't want to take anything away from these letters. She didn't want to become like Jesus or Christ in a body and be worshipped and misunderstood and so forth. So she has remained anonymous. We can contact her through christway.co.za, www. But otherwise, we know nothing about her. So that's the way that's like the understanding that she and Christ has. And so we honor that. We don't try to nose in and find out who she is because it's of no importance. The letters are the importance. So, okay. I'm going to give the description of the synopsis of the letter coming from the recorder. In this letter, Christ explains the reality of men and women. So he's going to talk about the masculine and feminine and the truth of our being, so that all the stuff we do with earth and what's male, female, and so on, Christ defines us very well. And just because I'm very gay sensitive and all expressions of life, because this Christ consciousness is everyone, it's not excluded. Yeah, there's no exclusion to this. Christ consciousness is everyone. We get to use it as Christ tells us. So this does not, this is not going to pertain to identity, sexual identity. Christ is just talking about men and women. And, what we do with that, we do with that. So all in our right way, all in our right expression, as our inalienable right. So in this letter, Christ explains the reality of men and women, how to live within the laws of existence and come into a harmonious, blessed state of being in which all things are abundantly provided. Health is restored, and joy becomes a natural state of mind. That's what I want. That's what I'm living. That's what we're all living. Every individual can reach this interior state of blessedness, and peace will then become the norm. I just love how meditation comes in alignment with Christ's letters. Okay. Sorry, this headset doesn't work. It's great, but it slides. Okay, Christ returns, reveals startling truth is what I'm reading from letter 8. I've come to you again to speak of the true nature of existence. The truth of being is this: you You who believe only, oh, okay. For me, well, let me just read, okay, I'm sorry. The truth of being is this. You who believe only in the material world live entirely in the earthly, finite world. You live within a dimension of the manifestation of your beliefs. My beliefs are this, that's as far as I can exist. If they're this, I can exist here. If they're this, I can exist here. If they're this, I truly exist. Now he speaks to us. Those are we whose spiritual perceptions and lives have been raised in frequencies of vibrations to merge with the frequency vibrations of spirit, of the spiritual dimension, can perceive that we live in two dimensions. They are fully aware of this truth, and they, according to this truth, and evolve into ever higher frequencies of being. I didn't read this correctly because I'm looking for the words to bring this thought forth. I had one of my teachers, John Anthony Bochnowitz. I love to drop names in case you do know him, to know that we have a connection. And he had many workshops in our early days of the Spiritual Mind Center. And one thing that he brought forth was to speak from the I. Instead of you in a conversation or in a teaching, you separates me from you, which is not owning my own ideas. Okay, but when I say I, you are no longer distant from me. When I say I, I'm owning what I'm responsible for, my words, my thoughts, my feelings. Because a lot of discomfort can come, not in this environment, but much discomfort can come in relationships or discussions because of that separation of one greater than another, presenting themselves greater than another. When I say I and we, it's an incorporation, okay? So through this, I'm introducing this now because I was going to introduce it later, but every now and then I'll take a paragraph and I'll say, let's own that, okay? Let's bring that into the I, we, so that when I say I want you to feel that I within you, the I am. Not the I of Dwight, the I of yourself, okay? The I of the Christ within you. And when I use we, recognize this as the quality of consciousness that we're involved in, okay? What involves evolves, okay? So what I am within is what I become. Heaven is within, then heaven is without. Can't have heaven without. If I have hell within, it's hell without. Wow. So this is why I'm stumbling, okay? So I'm not going to talk about that any further. Every now and then I may say, I'm going to repeat that paragraph, or I may just start out with it because I've spent all this time on it. So, okay. So I'm going to reread this paragraph because I had that conflict going on in between my two consciousness levels. Okay, if I were at this level, that conflict would not be there. But instead it's like, okay, do I do it at this level the way it's read, or do I do it at this level the way that it's meant and intended? My perception, okay. Okay. We, whose spiritual perceptions and lives have been raised in frequencies of vibrations to merge with the spiritual frequencies of vibration of the spiritual dimension which we have created, can perceive that they live in two dimensions, just as I said between this conflict. We are fully aware of this truth, and we live according to this truth, and evolve into ever higher frequencies of being. As we know better, we do better, as one of my teachers taught. We are no longer bound by human belief, but live within the realization that we live within infinity in which are no limitations. The higher our vibrational frequencies of consciousness, the more aware are we that we live within infinity and that we set the only limits on what we can aspire to. Believe here, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, or maybe there's something, maybe there's a truth bigger than the one I've been told to believe, bigger than the one that's written in a book, bigger even than these letters. These letters reveal the truth. They're not the truth. We find that truth, and Christ brings it to us. So we are no longer bound by human belief. And if we're not believing that right now, that's why I'm using the we. So it's like, that's within us, okay? I heard a new movement begun right here in Richmond, Virginia, in a Unity church called Undivided. And a young man said that he was in some kind of a congregation, and I guess he was asked something or he responded in a way that someone didn't like, so they spit on him. He did not respond with an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Okay, he just, I don't remember now how he did it, because I look at something like that and say, wow, how could I handle something like that? Well, Christ tells me right here. Oh, I am no longer bound by human belief. I no longer am bound that I have to react in this way. Instead, I can react from the Christ way, place of no reaction, or the right word, or the nothingness. You know, when we're tuned into Christ, Christ will always lead us to the way that it would respond. You know, the way that Jesus would respond. You know, what would Jesus do? Well, it's all the Christ. It's not Jesus. It's the Christ. What would the Father of Jesus do? What would the Father of you and me do? So, see, when I see those, I mean, every paragraph is beginning with those. I just can't go there. Not in the state of mind I am right now. Okay, I'm just so, you know, when I'm owning it. Okay, if I'm conflicted with this, then for me, that's when I go into meditation and say, wow, what do I want to be? Do I want to be fully realized Christ? Do I want to be this love in every experience and resonate this love to others who are looking for this love? And we have community where we connect and we heal ourselves. And yeah. So we whose perceptions have been heightened in this way, while still in our bodies, have seen that there is only one dimension of actual individual being, and this dimension is divine consciousness activity. So it's what we call the collective consciousness. Yeah, that's a meditation that I had before this, and that may be why all this is so connected. We may also come to fully realize there is the further dimension of universal consciousness. Okay, so there's a beginning, and I'm claiming, from my understanding, that the beginning is consciousness. But there's something before that. There's something that comes from. And that, Christ tells us, is not attainable, because if we go there, we go again before the consciousness. And therefore the consciousness doesn't exist. So it's back to that from which everything comes from, even the consciousness. So we may be aware that there's even more. What did I come from? Okay, I came from consciousness. What's before consciousness? That's what the intellect always looks for, is the questions, the wanting to know. So that's what we do. We seek and we find. And because we've opened ourselves to Christ, Christ is infusing us with its truth through these letters. You know, Christ says these letters, don't let them be a crutch. Don't let these be all it is. Meditate on them, become what the letters are revealing. Yeah, become what the letters are revealing. Okay, I'll not interrupt. They may also come, they may also come to fully realize there is the spiritual dimension of universal consciousness, in which the universal resides in perfect equilibrium and may be penetrated by none, because within this dimension, any individuality would become immediately drawn into the unity of being. This dimension Christ is talking about, we discussed in letter 5. So the unity of being is something that I think about. You know, I think we are unity of being. But what Christ is talking about is this perfect equilibrium of masculine and feminine energy, positive, negative, whatever you want to call it. Christ calls it many different things in letter 5. And there's this energy that's all it is. It's just this energy. It has no purpose. So it's in total equilibrium. It's like seeing a puddle or a pond. Yeah, let's use a puddle. So seeing a nice sized puddle and seeing no wind or anything, just see the total serenity. You know, there's no disturbance, there's nothing at all. And as soon as we drop a pebble in, that's the Big Bang. Whatever it is, you know, every thought to me is a Big Bang, the way Christ describes it, or the way I understand Christ. Every thought we have, every activity we take is like a Big Bang. It's a new creation. Everything we think, everything we do is a new creation. So when Christ is talking about unity of being, he's talking about that perfect nothingness. I mean, people hate hearing me say that, especially my wife, but there's that nothingness. But it's everything. I mean, it's the nothingness that is everything that is. That's how God is everywhere present, because this vibrational energy is all there is. And we get to energize it in certain ways, and these certain ways that it's energized, it appears in those ways. So, well, that's we'll bring forth of what letter 5 is if you didn't understand, because letter 5 is pretty intense. Back to the letter. When a soul reaches in understanding and realization the topmost level of the frequencies of vibration of consciousness, Christ consciousness, the soul can look down and review the levels of vibration ascending and descending to those of humanity on earth, and know with love and compassion, humanity is trapped in the lower vibrations of divine consciousness, hidden within the ego drive. Won't talk about this much because this is what pretty much the rest of tonight's reading will be, or this morning's reading. The soul can look down and review the levels of vibration ascending and descending to those of humanity on earth, and know, with love and compassion, humanity is trapped in the lower vibrations of divine consciousness, hidden within the ego drive. Wholly unaware, those who are locked into this ego drive are wholly unaware of the truth of being. They think they know it, and that stops them from knowing it. The soul's true identity and the earthly truth of the ego. Neither does it have the slightest awareness of the immense purpose behind its existence and the eventual mission it must embark upon. And, I use this and I look back on my life, and yeah, I see what I've ascended from. Okay, I'll just say that, And if I look back, then I'm looking at the descending back to the beginning, but the beginning starts where I am now and beyond. The beginning starts as the pure Christ consciousness. The task of the newborn soul is to experience, through means of its sheath of the psyche, we talked about that last week, all that these lower frequencies have to offer, and grow as a result of the mental, emotional events and experiences arising out of their thoughts and feelings. The soul must learn, and we had a lot of discussion around that last night, so please take that into meditation. The soul must learn. Does the soul learn? That's what the discussion was. Or is it already? Or is it both and? The soul must learn through trial and error the state of consciousness which makes it immensely happy or burdened with grief and sorrow, which initiate various physical limitations. As I say, that's something I could talk on that more than I have already. The purpose of life on earth is not to discover a means to experience undeviating joy and bliss, although this is what each soul longs for. Such bliss and joy would hinder the soul's progress into the higher spiritual vibrations of consciousness. Our goal is not to achieve something, our goal is to be that which we want to be. I guess is a way I would think it in this moment. Eventually, after many lifetimes of highs and lows, of comfort and sorrow, the psyche wakes up to the truth of its being and realizes that it has within itself the potential to draw on divine consciousness for insight, understanding, and knowledge, and to raise its spiritual consciousness vibrations to those of health, well-being, protection, inner growth, spiritual nutrition, and to radiate to others the nature of divine consciousness itself, which we are becoming, which we already are, but it's an unfoldment. It's an evolution. It's like we have the seed of the Christ within us, and we nurture and nourish it in ways that it expresses. So if we nurture and nourish it with love, it expresses as love. If we nurture and nurture it with anything less, let's say fear, punishment, self-aggrandizement, then that's what it becomes. But the truth of being is the inclusivity of everything that is. That's the truth of being. That's what we have been taught is not true. And our judgments keep it that way. As I have said before, consciousness is life, and life is consciousness. Where there is life, there is consciousness. Where there is consciousness, there is life. Everything in existence is defined by vibrational frequencies of consciousness. Repeat. Everything in existence is defined by vibrational frequencies of consciousness. Light, sound, color, all physical phenomena, both living and inanimate. If you can change the frequencies of vibration of any single thing, you change the appearance of that thing, be it sound, color, gas, liquid, physical organs. When physical organs present an appearance of ill health, it is because the normal frequencies of vibrations of that physical organ have been reduced, and the life, the intelligence within the organ has been depleted. Intelligence isn't depleted, it's changed. It's been reduced, as Christ says. Science presents the universe as being matter possessing consciousness. But the truth is this: the universe is consciousness, which has taken on its appearance of matter as a result of a descent into the lower frequencies of vibrations of consciousness. So our form is from the consciousness of us that's creating the form. Our experiences are from the consciousness of us. It's consciousness before form. This is the true reality of existence and nothing else. Your existence is all a matter of frequency of vibrations. The higher the spiritual perceptions and the adherence to spiritual thought, the more swift are the personal vibrational frequencies in the body. The vitality is raised and illness eventually disappears. The scientific fraternity believes you live entirely within the human dimension comprising the solar system and the galaxies of the stars. Science believes the human intellect is the highest point of intellect, of intelligent reference at any time, having evolved in response to changing environment and climatic conditions, and is purely the product of brain activity. So many scientists believe that. Well, I guess scientists that are informing the world what to believe. According to science, your emotions are wholly real and valid, and what you think and feel is beyond all dispute. These constitute the only reality of existence. Normalcy is computed according to the average thoughts, actions, and responses to the environment. This is perceived as the human reality. So this is the current appearance of our world, that we segregate people. We segregate characteristics and activities. And Christ says here that we live in a world that everything is average, and then there's above average and below average. So he talks to that, because this is what he talks to. In Desiderata, I love one of the lines that says, compare yourself to no one, for they are always greater and lesser than you are. And that's a very humbling thought for me to ponder at the time I read it and applied it in my life. Okay, so any talents which transcend the average output of average minds is reckoned as being genius, arising from unusual mental powers. The below average output is said to be due to retardation due to some physical cause, genetics, birth trauma, etc. Science believes the physical dimension is the beginning and the end of existence. Science is so set against any possibility of self-delusionary beliefs that it will accept as being real any phenomenon, provided it can be computed, estimated, and proved by instruments. If you think about this carefully, you will come to realize that what science holds fast to as fact is in reality only belief created by drawing conclusions through the exercise of their five senses. There's nothing outside the physical in belief, and there's nothing outside the physical for that belief. We have to open to a higher belief. So is it with every other facet of your existence. I'm sorry, I thought there was a comma there. So is it with every other facet of your existence. In your earthly dimension, facts take place second by second, but the moment they have happened, they become memory beliefs, and memories are not always accurate. Whatever feelings and thoughts you have about the past are not facts, but points of views, beliefs, and are therefore not facts, nor the reality behind them. Facts change. And a fact is whatever they statistically prove of what they want to prove. So that shows the impermanence of a fact. You know, one study will show this, another study will show that, and I'm going to resonate with the one that I believe more in. But there's a truth that Christ is revealing. This applies to every facet of your existence. The truth is, you live in a worldly dimension composed entirely of your beliefs, arising from your responses to what happened 100, 1,000, or 10,000 years ago. At one time, people believed the world was flat. Therefore, for them, they lived in a flat world and were afraid to sail the seas too far in one direction, because they were in danger of falling off the edge of the world. For the people, a mere 400 years ago, their world was flat. Today, with knowledge, your world is accessible in every direction. I have a YouTube on this of Columbus compared to Jesus. If you're interested, it's YouTube channel chapel-in-the-sky. And I think when you're there, you can search on Columbus, because Jesus is in a lot of the titles. People in the past, and also in the present time, directed their lives according to old wives' tales, the power of the ancestors, and other legends. Big one being God and religion. They believed in them so implicitly, the limitations imposed by these beliefs restricted people's actions and activities. If the church has taught the love of Jesus, just think of what the world would be like today. If instead of separating one from another, even within the Christian sect, if they would take down all the walls and know that there's one God, one Christ, one truth, and live what Jesus taught us to live. That's why Christ has come back saying, God, you guys didn't get it, so I'm going to give you another chance. Before you destroy yourselves with this hell that you're creating, I'm going to bring it back again and see if this time we can bring heaven on earth for everyone on the earth, not just a few. I remember this, the next sentence in my time with a Baptist minister. Dancing was believed to be sinful and wicked by certain Christian sects, for instance. Therefore, many people who could have derived great happiness and release from stress when dancing were wrongfully denied this pleasure, all because of a belief of it was sinful, Religion comes under the same heading. Beliefs are the very substance of religion. They are founded on age-old happenings, which are nothing but belief. The beliefs may have been relevant to the general mindset of those times, but they have long since become irrelevant in a constantly changing world. Yet they are strictly adhered to and become the focus of worship, festivities, celebrations, mourning, and more destructively, they become the reason for men killing one another and causing horrific misery to women and children. Certain religions claim that God is everywhere and in all things, but also affirm dogmatically that no one knows the mind of God or the reasons why people kill one another. It may be in God's plan, they say. With mindsets composed of a conglomeration of illogical beliefs, where can mankind at this present time find any certainty of beauty, joy, health, well-being, and love? If we only watch the news media, we say, oh, woe is me, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. But if we don't look at that, and we spend more attention to envision a higher vision for humanity, a humanity where there is no longer war, because people are discussing differences and coming into agreement. It can be this simple. Christ knows how to do all this. Not Christ a man, but Christ as a consciousness, a God consciousness. Religious ideas present a God whose will can bring life and healing or death and destruction. In such beliefs, there is no certainty of anything other than uncertainty. With such a belief, any sickness or abnormality can be excused as being God's will. It is your beliefs which control all your expectations of what life may hand out in the future. Healthy antagonism, I'm sorry, I apologize, it's the way my brain read that. Healthy agnosticism, the kind of mindset which accepts it does not know the nature of God, or whether there is any God at all, but is perfectly open to the conviction imparted by enlightenment, is preferable to fanatical beliefs in half-truth or even non-truth. How blind is the human race generally? People are like moles living within their tunnels, convinced they are capable of sizing up the entirety of their existence by using their senses of hearing, smell, very limited vision, and touch. Thus may you descend the scale of life forms and witness thousands of species living lives entirely defined and limited by their senses, by their judgments, by their beliefs, by their perceptions. What they can perceive as real constitutes their personal reality, their particular world. Every strata of existence experienced by various species of living things is distinct from each other within the earthly dimension. This includes the human mind, which is literally possessed by religious doctrine and dogmas and imprisoned in scientific theories and mathematical formulas. Religious doctrines have been conceived by human reasoning in an effort to explain the teachings of spiritual masters, whose minds have moved beyond the human sphere of intellect into the heavenly spheres of inspired perception of universal reality. Scientific concepts are also the product of the human senses rationalizing and giving names to phenomena viewed by human sight during experimentation. So this is where we ended last week, and so we'll begin next week with when therefore. So Christ now takes us, we've looked at one collective consciousness of humanity, very limited in the beliefs, and we can have compassion because most have been there, at least at some level and degree. So we can have compassion and gratitude of willing to have the courage to go outside the box, even though ridiculed or whatever, okay? So I feel very blessed to first have been in touch with Jesus, and then through Science of Mind, and now in Christ's Letters, that Jesus told me I could be everything that he was. And that's what I've always been seeking. How can I do this? How can I do this? And I found it in the Gospels. I found how to love as Jesus loved. I understood that very well. I did not understand the creative process. I did not realize, I just knew what love was and what it wasn't. Whether I lived it or not was another thing, but to the best of my ability. And then Science of Mind made me realize that my thoughts are what I create, that the Father of Jesus is also the Father of me, the Christ of Jesus is the Christ of me. And through these laws of existence, the laws of the universe, thought with feeling creates. It's the way it is. So now when I find Christ's Letters, it's taking the Science of Mind. The Science of Mind is like the foundation for me for Christ's Letters. What Christ's Letters have done is they've come in and there's strengthened this foundation even more. I look at the Science of Mind as a scientific approach to the universe, not cold. There's love all through it. There's Christ, there's God all through it. But it's a provable thing. Christ comes along and takes that same thing, this provable truth, that thought with feeling is a creative process to bring itself into manifestation, My world is what I believe it to be, what I make it to be. But Christ does it where Science of Mind to me takes me to the door of ascension, to the door of where I have all the tools to become the Christ. But Christ comes along and says, okay, this is who you are. Now let's ascend from here. So it's like Science of Mind is taking me up to, let's say, through my master's degree program, and Christ comes along and gives me the doctorate, gives me the specifics. And the specifics are mind-blowing because they're bigger than we could put into anything. So thank you for being with me this time. I keep apologizing for everything, but you know, what I've heard feels very, very wonderful, and I'm grateful that you were here with me to bring this forth. So God bless you, and see you next week.